everyone. My name is Alison Woodall, and I'm a relocation coach. That means I get to help you with the financial, logistical, and emotional issues that make moving to a new state so stressful. And today I am talking to Lindsey Briggs, and she moved her family from California to Idaho. Lindsey, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really looking forward to talking to you because I know that there are so many people who are just drawn to Idaho, particularly people who live in California, because it's far enough away that you have a different kind of lifestyle to the California lifestyle, but yet it's close enough that you can fly back and you don't feel like you're too distant if you have family left in California. So I would like to start at the beginning of your kind of relocation journey. And what was it that made you want to leave California in the first place?
Okay, well, a lot of reasons. And our story's a little different than my friend Erica, who you also had on, where she was born and raised many generations in California and never thought she would leave. That wasn't really the case for me. I did grow up in California, but my husband and I learned pretty early on after we were married and starting to have kids that it was going to be really difficult to raise our kids there. And so, yeah, we kind of started dreaming about it years ago. And so, for different reasons, just the cost of living and just how difficult it is to have a nice home and in a nice, safe neighborhood. On the income that we had, and a lot to do with the future and safety of the kids and wanting them to be in a place where they could grow up and have careers and families. And we envision and hope that they will still live close to us when they're grown and not feel like they have to go and leave and move somewhere. So yeah, we have been dreaming about it for some time.
And so you obviously, once you started having kids, you were thinking, okay, maybe we should start leaving. But from that time when you said, okay, we've got to do this, we've got to make it happen, until you actually hit the road, what was that kind of time period? Was it years? Was it months?
It was probably months, because for the conversation did change from maybe one day to we're going to do this. It's not an if, it's a when. Really during the 2020, when the world flipped upside down. And but my husband was still in school. He was doing an online education degree, and we also had a big family vacation plan. So we kind of had some things that was like, okay, let's finish this and get through that, and then we can be free to go. And once he finished his degree, and we just made this plan of like, okay, we're going to take a road trip. We're going to explore different states. We thought at the time maybe we would explore all different states. We didn't even know where we wanted to go, but we ended up narrowing it down to Idaho. And then once we chose Idaho, it happened really quickly. From like, I would say we took our road trip in the fall. We made an offer on a house in the winter, and we were moved in before spring. So
wow. And so how did you decide Idaho, because there's so many people who have no clue and they just like, well, I don't know. Did you get very specific about what you wanted from certain places, and then you drove to Idaho and went, this is it? Or was there a scientific process to it? What was kind of your way that you narrowed it down?
Yeah. A little bit, I guess you could say a little bit scientific, in that we are both pretty nerdy. So we did make a spreadsheet, and we put the spreadsheet on my blog, which we'll talk about later, but so you can see a little snippet on it if you wanted. We basically had a bunch of categories of things that were important to us. Cost of living, the politics and the feel, but also whether there was certain things available, good church, a good American Heritage Girl troop. We're into that. So we just had this spreadsheet of all the different things that are important. Voting security, we're big on that. And we gave each state a score. We did a bunch of online research, and we had like 12 different states, and we made this big spreadsheet. And it was pretty funny because my husband came up with the scoring and like weighted certain things more than others. Every state got a score. And Idaho was at the top. It just kind of happened. And honestly, it surprised me because I did not think that I liked Idaho that much. And then it's just the more that we thought about it, it's like, oh, it really does, because yeah, all you think is potatoes, right? Like that's all I knew about Idaho before was potatoes and cows and farms and stuff. So I just didn't think it would suit us, but it really, really does. So kind of surprised us.
Well, good. And so I don't think it's nerdy what you did. I think it's actually very, very sensible. And we'll talk about your blog in a bit, but you know, I have my online guide, and the very first thing that I do with people is I take them through a whole lot of check sheets so that you can get very, very specific about exactly what you want. It's not a spreadsheet. It is a series of check sheets. And a lot of people think that they want something, and by the time they've gone through all of these exercises, digging down to tiny little details about how you live your life every day, and suddenly you do go from 50 states down to maybe 5 or 6. And then my nerdy part is I have a budgeting spreadsheet, because there are so many people who think I can't afford to live in this state. But when they actually list all their budget and their expenses where they live currently, and then compare it to cost of living indexes in other states, you can actually see that although you may be earning less money, your cost of living based on where you are right now is going to be so much, you know, it's you can survive. And so you're not thinking, I hope this works out. I hope I've made the right decision. You've got concrete evidence from your check sheet or your spreadsheet. So that's great. So when you went on your road trip to kind of go to Idaho, you'd obviously, it was the top of your list. Did you just drive around a few cities and go and find your city and go, oh my goodness, this is the one?
Yeah, well, we were hoping it would work that way. We actually fell in love with more than one city, so then it became very difficult. But yeah, we made a plan. We stuck to southern Idaho. For us, the climate seemed a little more easier of a transition. Once you get up north into the Panhandle, it gets much harsher winters and cold, which we wouldn't be used to. But it's still very beautiful up there. So we just stuck to southern Idaho, went from Boise and then across to Idaho Falls on the other side. And yeah, we just turned it into a family vacation and just had fun, and wanted the kids to have a really fun experience with it and not feel like it was, you know, all business. It was really about like being tourists and seeing what Idaho had to offer.
So that's great. So you decided on your town, and then you put in offers on houses, and was that relatively straightforward?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would say all thanks to the grace of God, because there were things that just fell into place, and just doors opened. Not to say it wasn't without bumps in the road, but we had a very specific timeline because we needed to sell our house in California and use that money to buy the house in Idaho. So that can be a kind of a tight, stressful time, because we put our house on the market, and then we made our plan to go, just assuming that it would sell that weekend, which it did. And then we drove around in the short couple of days, and I think our realtor showed us like something like 15 or 18 houses in one day. It was insane. But we're just really good about going in and out, like, oh, nope, let's just move on. If we know that it's not going to work, move on. And we got it narrowed down pretty quickly to a couple of houses, and they're both new construction. New construction was really the way to go here. It just became very clear because the older houses were priced about the same or overpriced. And so the newer ones had specials. It was just a better deal. We did have to deal with like really young landscaping, and but there's a home warranty, just a lot of great things about having a new house. So yeah, we decided on the one we wanted. Well, that's a whole story. I don't know if you want to hear. The kids were, of course, a little bit a part of the process. We wanted them to be a part of the process. So they picked a different house than we did. And ultimately, though, even though we want them to be a part of it, mom and dad do decide. So we broke the news, we're going to pick this one. And there were tears and drama. And of course, it had been a really long day and everybody was crying. And then we got a call from our realtor late at night saying, sorry, that one already sold. And so we went, well, kids, God, the Lord answered your prayer. We're going to take the one that you picked. And so anyway, the Lord, answered their prayers and ours. We love it as well. And then it was like up till midnight getting our offer in, because there was another offer, and it was several days of waiting to see if it was accepted. But yeah, it was accepted, and then smooth sailing from there.
Wow. Well, I love the way you just casually say, we saw 15 to 18 houses in a day, and we walked in and we knew whether it was the right one or not. That again goes back to being very, very clear on what you want. And when you have that very clear vision for what you want, specifically, then you can walk into 15 houses and say, no, they're not the right ones, but these two would work. And then, so one of my favorite things that I tell my kids is work like it all depends on you, but pray like it all depends on God. So I love that thing that, this is a house we want, and then God sends you like that curveball and the kids get what they want, but you've done the work, exactly what you want. You've narrowed it from 15 houses down to 2. And then, you choose between those, and God has the final say. So do you like the house? Was it a good choice in the end?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, we were back and forth because we had a spreadsheet going, pros and cons, and we were back and forth. It is a smaller lot than we wanted and a smaller garage, but so there were a couple compromises that had to be made, but it is in other ways way nicer than I ever thought we would be able to afford. So yeah, we feel very blessed. And I totally love your saying there. It reminds me as well, one of my favorite verses is, and I'm not going to say it's exactly right, but man prepares his horse for battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. And so that's kind of similar, where we know that this was only possible because of divine intervention, but we did have to work really hard for it too.
Yes. And if you're not a Christian, if you don't believe in God, then you can call it karma, you can call it whatever you want. That when you put that work in and you narrow down your choices, and then you say, okay, well, we'll put in a bid on this house and a bid on this house, destiny, karma, whatever you want to call it, intervenes, and you get the house that you're supposed to have. And then I also teach the concept of a stepping stone move, that sometimes to get you out of a state that you don't love, or a place that you don't love, sometimes you buy that house or you rent that first house and it's not quite what you want. You live in it for a year or however long, and it's that stepping stone, and then you love the area, but you decide this house is better, or maybe you want to move further away, or it's not that state that you want to be in. But that first move is always the hardest, and then from there you can step onwards. So I would love to go through your actual moving process and how you packed up. And how old are your kids? Are they old enough to get involved and help?
Yeah, well, they tried. They were a huge help. So my kids range from 13 down to 6. Yeah, they did a lot. They really, mainly in the declutter department, because I get very overwhelmed by clutter, and I'm the kind of mom that I do have guilt. Like, I'll go back and forth. I have guilt throwing away their stuff like behind their back. I don't really want to do that. But at the same time, sometimes I just have to step in and say, this is too much. But they actually did really well. We gave them bins. I just found random bins I had, or boxes around the house. And I said, okay, here's your donation bin. It just needs to go to the dump bin, and here's your keep bin. And they went through their toys one by one by one, and it took many days because they acquired a lot of certain kids more than others, but they did really well. And then once we were able to say, okay, this is the stuff we want, we could pack it easier. So that was a huge step.
And I agree. And the more kids you have, the more they have to help, because the more stuff that comes along with your kids. And, I hear so many stories from people who are exhausted while their kids, particularly teens, are like, well, I don't want to move. I'm not helping. And I always say we are modeling behavior for our children. Even if you're moving and you're terrified and you're stressed and you're anxious, present the most confident front that you can to your children. It's okay to say, I'm really tired. yes, I'm nervous about this move. Yes, I have worries about the future, but we're doing this and we're going to do it together, and model that kind of behavior for them, because you don't want them to be stuck in the same place for the whole of their lives because they've never moved with you. Whereas if you model how to be confident, but still have some doubts, how to move forward even if you are fearful, it makes them brave. Because if they're 25 and they decide I want to move, they'll think back to their childhood when they moved with you, and they're like, yeah, I remember mom and dad, they were tired, and I think mom cried a few times. That always, I always cry at some point. Yes. But then they know that you get through it. And also, I mean, it's such a great life lesson. When my kids are tired and they're like, I don't want to pack one more box, I'm like, one more. Do one more. Don't quit now. Just one more, because every box that you pack is one less box that I have to pack, and that'll give me more energy to plan something fun for the trip or something. So I think that's great. So for the people who are watching this, who maybe are thinking about Idaho, what do you love about your life now? What has been the greatest thing about moving to Idaho for you?
There's been a lot of things that, yeah, I'm trying to remember all the things, because there were things that we loved when we first visited, and then now we keep learning new things as we go along, which is neat. I love where we're at. It's just outside of the city, so we have access to all the shopping we want, but it also has a small town feel. So there's lots of cornfields and wheat fields. We just drive to our house every day. When I driving around and getting home, there's this beautiful field of gold that's just right there as I'm turning the corner. It's just, I just love all the scenery and the mountains and the horizon. The weather, this might be surprising, but we actually like the weather here more than California, which I know everybody raves on California weather, but we love that it has all 4 seasons. It has a little bit of snow, but not too much, and not as brutal summer where we were. So we love the weather and the scenery, and then it just, of course, though, the freedom, the sense of freedom, just everybody has a lot of the same values as we do, and that just feels really good. It feels like our voice can actually be heard here when we go to vote. Now, I will say it's not perfect. I wish actually that it were more conservative than it actually is, and that's kind of a whole tangent. I see some things slipping, but for the most part, people that we interact with are very like-minded with us and want what's best for family and churches and freedoms. So we just love that. It just feels very safe.
Oh, wonderful. And so did you have like a period of adjustment where, because I always think the first month or so, you're in so much chaos, particularly when you have kids, getting them enrolled in things, finding their sports, if they're enrolling in school, getting all of that taken care of, and you're in the chaos of unpacking. And if you or your spouse works, then you have to get sorted in jobs and everything. And then you kind of get through that first chaotic couple of months. And that's when you look around and you're like, okay, so I have lots of people I know, but they're not my closest, bestest friends. And, I'm still trying to find the right dentist or the right doctor. Did you have that period of adjustment, or was it all just like rainbows and daisies the moment you got there?
Absolutely. So I actually blogged about this, and I compared it to a relationship where you do go through phases, right? And so you're developing this relationship with your new state. And at first is the romance stage where you just have the rose-colored glasses and everything is peachy and wonderful. And but then the reality of certain things hit you, because you are seeing things a little bit skewed at first. So that's what I call the disappointment stage. And so, I definitely went through that. I had some trouble driving and getting around here. There's a lot of construction and one-way streets. I actually got into a minor car accident like within a month of moving here. It was pretty minor, thankfully, but it was a stressful thing. And the cops were really nice about like, oh, we're still learning how to drive here too. I'm like, well, then why is it like this? But anyway, yeah, so there were some adjustment things for sure. And now though, I would say we're starting to come out of that and having like a renewed commitment stage where we're feeling like, okay, this is a good place to live. And there are things that we're learning that we like, that we didn't even know about before, and experiencing every season, like as the weather changes and you see the flowers bloom, it's like, oh, okay, this is really pretty. So yeah, you definitely go through stages.
Yeah. And I always say you've got to give it a year, because particularly depending on the weather where you live, if you've got moderate weather, that's great. But if you move to somewhere like Florida and you've never seen the pop-up thunderstorms, you're like, and you move in summer, you're like, oh my goodness, where have I moved to? How am I going to cope with this? Or if you move to, the Midwest in winter, you're like, I've made a mistake. But you've got to get through a whole year of the weather and just life and the cycles of life that happen through the year, to just realize if you truly do like somewhere. And then if you don't, that's okay. You can move on. But after a year, that's when you really decide. And I love that recommitment and the analogy of a relationship. That's great. So tell me about your blog. So I'm going to link to the video I did with Erica, because there's 3 of you. And tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny because it was right around Christmas when we bought the house and put our offer in, and we were on our way home, and I was just texting all my friends like, we did it, here's a picture of the house, like we bought it, we're in contract, we're gonna actually move. And Erica, my friend Erica, was one of those, which, just a little tidbit, like, make sure you know which of your friends, I think you'll know which of your friends are going to be happy for you and celebrate with you, and just latch onto those. So that's just another little tip I have. And I knew Erica would be happy for me because she just moved to Tennessee. And so I was just sharing the news with her, and we were texting. And I remember I think I was in the bathroom on the road trip, like waiting for my kids, how you're waiting for the kids in the bathroom and you're just kind of like on your phone. And she picked up this message came up from her of like, what do you think about starting a blog with me? And we could call it Red State Rambling, since we both moved from a blue state to red states. And I thought, well, sure, why not? So it was right in the midst of it that we started it, which was really fun, because then I got to kind of document, and it was almost like a journal for me, especially at first, because I could just post some of the pictures and the thoughts and the things that I went through right there in the moment as I was moving. And now that we're here, we're still finding all sorts of things to write about, of what it's like to transplant like this, and the difficulties and challenges. And so, yeah, we try to encourage people, and we try to provide some practical advice, but also just our thoughts on what's going on in the world and why so many people are moving right now. So yeah, we're really excited about it. And then Michelle joined us as well as a third person, who was also our friend. We all went to the same church in California, and just went 3 different directions. So Michelle is in Texas. And so, yeah, it's been really a great way to stay connected with my friends and to share what we've learned in hopes that it would help other people.
Well, wonderful. I think you're a great example of how you can have a friendship in one state and you all go to totally different states, but you still stay in contact. And you obviously don't see each other, every Sunday. But when you do get together and your kids all get together, those times are almost more special because you put so much effort into it. And you may not speak as often, but when you do, those connections maintain. I mean, I've lived here 20 years and I can get together. I mean, I just went back to England for a few weeks. And when I get together with my friends from England, after 20 years of being apart from them, it's exactly the same. You just slot back in because our lives have carried on. And like you say, there'll be some people when you leave who are not excited for you. And those people will just fall away from your life and they'll be replaced with people who do share your journey with you. And I think that's wonderful. So how do people find your blog? Because I'm sure there's lots of people who, want inspiration, want to find out maybe about, obviously Idaho or Tennessee or Texas, or just get a bit of inspiration and some practical tips.
So you can go to www.redstateramblings.com. And we're also on Instagram. So you can just search for Red State Ramblings, and you can follow us there. We try to post little quotes of inspiration or just little tidbits of what we're up to. So yeah, it's been really fun. We've been posting it in different Facebook groups and sharing with our friends, and it kind of exploded right away. So it's been interesting to see just how many people share and want to share in our experience.
Well, wonderful. Well, wherever you're watching this video, if you look down in the notes, I'm going to post the Instagram link and also the link to your blog. So if you had, one or two tips for people who are wanting to leave, one state and move to another, obviously you specialize in California, but it's a similar experience moving from any liberal state to any more conservative state. What is your biggest tip, or a few things that you would share with people?
Yeah. One would be, like we talked about, just surrounding yourself with people who want the best for you and listening to those voices more. And just do your best to really pray and think about what is going to be best for your future, and just go for it and take risks and take chances, and not to be held back for the wrong reasons. Maybe there's good reasons to stay, but there's also wrong reasons to stay. And so just to really evaluate and think about your reasons, and if they're good reasons to move, then just go for it, and you can do it.
Well, that's wonderful. And also accept that you're never going to be 110% certain you're doing the right thing. Even if you've done all your research, you've prayed about it, you feel it's the right thing. There's always going to be that little bit of, should I be doing this? Should I be, because you're changing your whole life. And as long as you've done your research, I always say, 80 to 90% certain, just go for it, like you say. So.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you said about a stepping stone, because that really helped me with my anxiety. Sometimes I would get anxiety about, did I do the right thing? And my husband was really good about telling me, like, it's okay, honey. Like, if it doesn't work out, we'll move again. And even though that sounds like horrible because of how much work it is, it's also comforting to know, like, yeah, that's right. We can just change. We can do this again. And you're exercising your moving muscles, as my friend Erica calls them, where the more moving you do, the better you'll get at it anyway. So just to remember, like, you can always move again.
Well, wonderful. Well, I know that you will have inspired so many people, and everybody, you need to go to redstateramblings.com. And again, I'll post the link down below, because you've inspired so many people, and it's a great resource just for practical tips and for guidance. So thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Alison. It was really fun.